Hello, St. Lucie County 5th graders. It is Miss LaShawn Ashton, and I am here with you to review what you're doing this week. So, we are going to be looking at historical fiction. When we're reading historical fiction, we need to think about who, what, where. Are there historical figures? And how do we know what happened in the past? So, if we break down the word historical fiction, what does that mean? Good. Historical fiction is actually not real, it's fiction, but it takes place in history, some part of history, some time. So this week you're going to be reading two stories. The first one is Dangerous Crossing. It's in your Journeys book, but because we're virtual, it is actually PDF'd into your Canvas course. So this story is... it talks about the revolutionary voyage of John Quincy Adams. So when we're reading through this story, we need to think about these things. So who is it about? So as we're reading, we know it's about John Quincy Adams. Then what? What is happening? Well, a lot of stuff is happening in this story. John Quincy Adams and his dad are trying to sail from Massachusetts to France because they need support from other countries. They need support from other countries because Britain has invaded and there have been fighting in the United States with Britain for a very long time. As they're sailing, so another what, as they're sailing, they're coming across British ships. That's a problem because the British are trying to force Americans to come under British control. And it has been happening for many years. So as they're in their ship sailing to France, they come across some British ships. And those British ships actually are trying to capture them. But what happens in between then is that there's this huge storm and they learn about seasickness because they all get sick. And lightning strikes the ship, and when they finally come out of the storm a few days later, they notice that the British ships are gone. But the bad thing is that the ship had had a lot of damage, so they had to fix that. And the other problem was not only did it go through a lot of damage, but it also had been blown hundreds of miles off course. So that's a problem. Then they came across another British merchant ship, but the good thing is it's a merchant ship, so they were able to overtake them and seize them. And that way they overtook that ship and were able to help get to France, which they finally did. And the reason they wanted to be at France is because the French did not like the British. So they knew if they got the French on their side, they could help defeat the British. Okay, so where? So it takes place in the sea, because they're going from Massachusetts to France, right? Historical figures. Are there any historical figures in this? Correct. John Quincy Adams is actual real life historical figure. So he is in that along with his dad. So that is true. And how do we know what happened in the past? Does it say in the text it happened yesterday, 100 years ago? What does it say? Well, if you actually look, it does say on a cold February day in 1778. So we know it happened in 1778, which is a long time ago. So we know it was that it happened in the past. So that's kind of a gist of the story. When we're reading anything, we need to think about who, what, where, when, why, how, especially if we're reading and we kind of get stuck. So raise your hand if you've ever read something and you stop and you're like, what did I just read? I do it all the time. So when you think about these things, so after each page or each 2 pages as you're reading, you can ask yourself that. What is it about? Who is in it? What happened? Where did it happen? And then you're helping that fuzziness that you weren't really sure what was going on. You're able to think about it and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I read that. Okay, so that's a little strategy for you guys to use. So this is just kind of a 1-1. These are the historical fiction. We're talking about texts that happened in the past. It had real historical figures in it. Now I'm going to introduce a new signature to you. We're going to talk about RL 3.7. So I didn't mention this, but historical fiction, since it's not real. It is literature, so it's an RL standard. So that'd be RL 1.1. So RL 3.7. Analyze how visual elements contribute to the meaning, tone, and beauty of a text. So let's look at this. Let me get my marker. So we are going to analyze how visual elements. So if we're reading a text, what are visual elements? Good. Pictures, drawings, anything in the text that is a visual. It is not words, but it's something you can look at. And how do they contribute to the meaning, tone, and beauty of the text? So how do they contribute to the meaning, tone, and beauty of the text? Well, you're in luck, because this story has a ton of pictures in it. So I was going to look at these right here. So if we look on these, this is page 330, which is not the same in yours because it's PDF'd. But if you look at this picture, how does that contribute to the meaning, tone, or beauty of the text? Good. So it is actually showing us what the ship looked like. So it helps with the meaning because it said that they sailed on a ship. Well, it was in 1778. So what did ships look like in 1778? So here's a representation of what that looked like. So we know what that looked like, what they had to be on. So in the text, when it talks about they had to go under the ship to the bottom, and they talk about the damage and the storm and the sails and the masts, we can see all that, and that helps us understand what was happening to them during that time. Also, here in this picture, how does that contribute to the meaning, tone, and beauty of the text? Well, it's showing us those 3 British ships that came across. So it's showing you what they look like, but it's showing you how they know what they were. Because he used this to see it. Here's another one. So this visual contributes to the beauty of the text. So this is actually when John Quincy Adams, one of the sailors on the ship, had pulled up a man-o'-war, and you get to see what that looks like. He had no idea what that was, John Adams. So it gives you an idea of what that looked like. It shows you that he's interested. It shows you that he's looking at it, and he's like, whoa, what is that? That's really cool. So that's helping with the beauty of it. It's showing you how things unfolded and what that looked like. So we can learn a lot from illustrations in a text and pictures. It can help us put the words and together. So sometimes things that are written in the text we might not completely understand, but there might be a picture, an illustration that helps us understand what that means. It gives us more detail. So then we combine both of them and we get a better picture of what the text is trying to say. So that is all for today. I'm so excited that I still have the opportunity to be with you guys. We will meet again on Monday, and I will be reviewing another text, which is a historical fiction. So I'll have some questions for you when it comes to that. Have a great day, and I'll see you on Wednesday.